I want to talk to you about China. The US has struck a trade deal with China after days of negotiations in Switzerland. Donald Trump described the fresh trade agreement with China as a total reset. I mean, what's your assessment of the deal? Is it too early to be celebrating? It's, of course, seen as good news. What's your take?
Oh, Gabriella, as a longtime advocate of diplomacy, I think it's a pretty good deal. You know, they had a 16-hour conversation in Geneva. That is Secretary of the Treasury and his opposite number in China. And they decided to dial it down a little bit. You know, these tariffs at 145 and 125% are now reduced to 30 and 10%. They're back to real world numbers. I think as a result of this, President Trump probably gave up a little more than he wanted to. I mean, he called for this sort of trade war to right a number of wrongs. He thinks that because the American economy buys more than it is selling, that it's on the short end of the stick here. Well, that's true, but it's also as a result of investment transfers and the like. It's not as simple as that. And, you know, to go to war with China on trade, I think, is very dangerous for this reason. And that is all trade wars, like sanctions and embargoes and the rest of it, poison diplomacy, everything else, everywhere else. And the Chinese leader, President Xi, is always fighting for his life. You know, it's not like they hold elections every 4 years in China. President Trump wanted to prove his point, so he went high on the tariffs. And the Chinese, you know, they took the bait and they bit back. And of course, this doesn't help the American consumer. And it also makes things very difficult for Australia. I mean, if Australia then appeases China on trade, the Americans will be all over them for contributing to this particular situation. And if they help the Americans too much, or if they agree to what America's doing, and the Chinese will hold them accountable. And of course, the problem with this trade war or this tariff war is that nations like Australia are stuck in the middle. I mean, as long as there are nations like Australia who are dependent on China for their economic survival and on the United States for their military survival, I mean, you can see that it's very hard to ride this road here because, or to thread this needle, because Australia depends on both of them for very different reasons. But look, I'm glad to see it's down. It's a 90-day moratorium, so to speak. There's still going to be a lot of pain on the American and Chinese sides. A number of the companies have slowed down. The shipping in America has slowed down at these ports. It hasn't gone through, but at least we're not going to have long-term supply problems. And of course, could we have avoided this whole thing? No, I understand Trump's complaint here, and that is America has been taken advantage of. On the other hand, Americans, like Australians, they like cheap sneakers and laptops and, you know, dolls and pencils from China around Christmas time. So, you know, it's a very difficult problem to solve. And so I think we're back to common sense. And, you know, at the end of the day, the market tells you what you're going to do. I mean, if you're going to go against everything that your marketplace stands for, you're going to be in trouble. And in China, as people like to point out in some of your packages, that China's got problems with its cities, it's got problems with unemployment, has factories closing down, it's got property crisis. And the Chinese ain't that happy about life. And so these things make things very difficult. On the other hand, they could settle for a lot less than the Americans because President Xi can force the Chinese to sacrifice a great deal more than President Trump, who only has 3.5 years to run, to ask the American people.
Professor Joe Siracusa, Dean of Global Futures at Curtin University, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.